Greetings, chess fans. My name is Arturs Neiksans. I'm the leading Latvian chess grandmaster, and I would like to provide you with my 2 cents about the current World Championship match in Singapore, where the world champion Ding Liren takes on the challenger and only 18 years old Dommaraju Gukesh. So that they played the very first game, and instead of going move per move analysis of the entire game, it was truly a fascinating game. In this review, I would like to break down what happened in the opening phase, because this had a massive implication on the outcome. So here we go. We are going to start with move e4. Now this is Gukesh's one of the obviously main principal choices. He's a big e4 and d4 player. And Ding mainly plays e4, e5. He likes to play these symmetrical positions, and I think that Gukesh's opening prep was also, of course, heavily based on this choice. But also, of course, Ding has been playing his fair share of Sicilian and the Karakan as well, but in this game, he played the French defense. Well, do you think this was a surprise to Gukesh? Probably no, because Ding Liren already has played quite a bit of French games lately, and also the French defense currently is reappearing at the highest level, thanks probably to the efforts to some of the greatest players in the world, like Magnus Carlsen. They have been playing the French defense at the highest level, so that's why it's not really a surprise that we are getting a return of the French defense in the World Championship matches. So d4, d5, black is trying to counter-strike in the center, and Gukesh played knight c3. Now, this is really the most principal way to play against the French defense. White immediately develops a piece and challenges the center. So black has two major choices, to play bishop b4 or knight f6. And Ding has been playing knight f6 before, more than once, so why not here? So knight f6 was played, e5, white attempts to get space advantage, knight e7, f4. So all of this makes perfect sense up to this moment, and after c5, there came the first surprise. So the challenger played knight e2, and that's a move that really puzzled me, because I quite could not understand what he was trying to avoid. So his idea is to play knight f3, c3, pardon the move order. Maybe he wants to start with c3, knight f3, then maybe bishop e3, g3, and bishop g2. But what I quite could not understand, why not start with knight f3? Because here after knight c6, he can still go knight e2. And after bishop e7, c3, this would essentially be repeating Ding Liren's game against Gada Kamsky from 2011. And surely in his opening prep, Gukesh saw the game. So he and his team probably prepped something for this particular game. I don't know what it is. So this knight e2 probably was just to avoid a certain move order, and then play c3 and probably play knight f3. Those are nuances. Maybe they don't really matter, because Ding still played knight c6, c3. And here, instead of bishop e7, this is the main line, by the way. How do you play out this line? Bishop e7, knight f3, queen b6. So black is trying to apply some pressure against your center, and if you're trying to complete your development like g3, black will play f6. And now the point is, after bishop g2, you need to watch out for ideas like takes, and castle. And suddenly black is ahead in development, and if you castle yourself, there's knight e5. So this is one of the key ideas why the black queen on b6 is positioned so well. So knight e5, rook f8, bishop f8, and black is simply up a pawn because you cannot take on e5. That's why here in this position, one of the main continuations instead of g3 is white plays a3. White wants to play b4, grab space, and then deal with the queen on b6. Black responds with a5, stopping these ideas of b4 altogether, and then white somehow still continues with this g3 idea. g3, sometimes the bishop goes to h3, should castle, there's even king f2 ideas, so it's very, very creative. But here instead, Ding played a5, and that's a move I really like, because it strictly follows the modern trend The modern trend is that in many openings you are aggressively pushing the side pawn as far as it goes. So black wants to play a5, a4 and essentially gather information where to put the pieces. So he is fighting for space advantage at the queen side, and then he chooses, maybe based on the information, he's going to have a pretty clearer idea where to position his minor pieces. Now the engine's choice here was, knight of 3, a4. Engine's choice here was a4, stopping black's push. But now things are not so simple, because again, if we compare this line, after queen b6, knight of 3, let's say black plays bishop e7, can white again proceed with the idea of g3? g3, let's say we play f6, bishop g2, black can include c takes, and let's say f takes. So it's not really clear if white favors from including a4, a5, because in some lines, this weakness on b4 could be pretty critical, meaning black gets access to bishop b4 or knight b4. So perhaps the choice here Gukesh could have went is to play a4, and after queen b6, knight of 3, bishop e7, take on c5 and put the knight on d4, which is a completely different game. As you can see, the engines don't even like it. So either way, here Ding decided to play knight of 3, ignore black's threats. So here Ding played a4, bishop e3 makes perfect sense to solidify the center, bishop e7, and now g4. And what it was pretty interesting is that Gukesh was playing out the opening very quickly, meaning like this was part of the prep. I don't really know. Maybe this was the case. I mean, a5, a4 is a very human move, especially even if this is not the top choice for an engine. I mean, it strictly falls in the category playing the modern chess, how it should be played. So even if I didn't know any big theory from the black's perspective, I would definitely consider to play like this from black. Play a5, a4, and then see what happens. But now what happened next really surprised me, is that after the logical queen a5, which is, by the way, not the top choice of an engine, Gukesh started to think. And he spent here like 20 minutes clearly showing that he was out of the prep. Why? Now that's a mystery to me, because queen a5 felt like a very logical move. So black is trying to play a3 and exploit the spin here. Maybe also initiate some b5, b4 ideas, and the queen and a5 in general just stands nice. But if you would go back about the move g4, that's also a slightly mysterious move, because I felt that Gukesh wants to play a5 pretty quickly, as quickly as possible. But to be honest, I still have my questions, because I'm not sure where's the big idea after the short castle. Is this f5 really so dangerous? I'm not so sure, because essentially what white is trying to do is only attack with a couple of pawns. So I have my reservations. And when I was watching the live commentary on chess.com, the experts were suggesting maybe there's an idea to play g4, g5, with the idea to stop black's f6 altogether and then somehow open up the king side and be very happy about it. Well, I have my reservations about the plan, because I think that black can simply ignore playing f6, and black could play like b5, b4, play at the queen side, and at the same time we're looking at what white is doing at the king side with g4, g5. It just feels weird. That's what it feels. So this g4 was a small mystery to me. It was like probably part of a deep engine prep, some longer, deeper idea. And after queen a5, apparently they didn't prep this. So here Gukesh played bishop g2. Maybe he could have played like a3 here. But then again, after knight b6, knight c4, there's some problems. So it's not really sure how white wants to deal with this. Maybe he can play d takes on c5, put the knight on d4. But I think this move g4, it strictly comes with the idea to keep the pawn on d4, because in order for you to play f5, which I think was the original idea, the pawn on d4 needs to protect the pawn on e5. So if at some point Gukesh has to take on d4 with the knight, this means f5 is probably not happening. If f5 is not happening, why do you play g4? Yeah, that's why I think this is what Gukesh was struggling here in this position. So after queen a5, he really wanted to proceed with his plan. He played bishop g2, although now again he was like pretty okay to accept c takes on d4, like c takes and knight e4 and knight e4 and knight e4, which by the way I think is still pretty okay for black. There's like bishop h4 check as well, and what do? Do you trade your bishops? Is your king walking? Not really sure. So what happened here? Gukesh played bishop g2. A3 was a nice move by Ding Liren, trying to get to the pawn on c3. Now his point was after b3, c takes on d4, that Gukesh will have to take with this knight, so that the pawn on c3 is left defended. Maybe Gukesh should have done it. Yeah, like knight e4, bishop d4, and then maybe play short castle, play f5, and after bishop h4 check, you can play bishop f2, and supposedly you're okay. But instead here, I think that Gukesh started to go the wrong way. So he decided to play b4, which might have been part of the prep in some similar lines. Maybe this was inspiration, I don't really know. But the point is, with his opening choices, he essentially reached a position that are understandable by engines. Meaning it's very difficult to play this position from the white's perspective, because the weaknesses for you are pretty obvious. I mean, there's a weakness on c4. So what Ding did, he just went for the weakness on c4. And now, according to engines, you have to play like knight b5 here, queen d8, and then in some lines you're playing bishop f1. Which, I'm sorry, it just makes no sense, because why play bishop g2? And now you have to go back, bishop f1, to play bishop d3, stopping knight c4, which, by the way, maybe black can even ignore. There's lines where black plays d4, knight e4, knight e5, and now you're just underdeveloped. And yet engine says you're like, okay. Yeah, so it's pretty weird, and it's pretty understandable that Gukesh didn't pick it up, because, for example, if he now casts a short, there's knight c4, there's h5 incoming, by the way, which is a very good reason why Ding was not casting short, because he can play h5 and shut the doors at the king side completely. So here, that's why Gukesh played short castle, and he was probably hoping for this f5 push. Knight c4 was played. For white to proceed with the attack, I suppose he has to keep the Daxwa bishop alive, otherwise you can forget about f5. So he played bishop f2, which is a human move. He wants to play queen e2, bishop g3, rook e1, and play f5. And if he gets f5, f6, things are really great. But again, chess is a very concrete game. And here, the world champion played bishop d7. Yeah, the engine says it's a minor inaccuracy. Maybe knight e4 was a bit more accurate. Yeah, who knows? So bishop d7, queen e2. And now after this trade, yet another illustration why this choice by Gukesh was not a good choice. Because engine says you have to take bishop takes on d4, which I understand. Yeah, it's like a very logical move. You are protecting the pawn on c3, you're protecting the pawn on e5, you want to play like rook e1 and f5, or maybe queen g3 or whatever. But what do you do after bishop b5? Because suddenly black has perfectly positioned minor pieces, beautiful outposts, the rook on f1 in some lines is under attack, and now the mighty engine says, the best move for white, you go back. Which is not how people think, like, at all. So black goes rook c8, now you play knight e4, now you play knight b3, and you go back. Play bishop b5, and somehow you're better. Does that make any sense to you? No, it doesn't make any sense to me. This is, again, not how people play. And that's why Gukesh was burning a lot of time for his choices. He decided to take with a knight, which again is pretty logical. He wants to play rook e1, bishop g3 and f5. And now comes this very, very strong idea, knight b2. And I think here Gukesh started to become really nervous, because he is not even close starting his king's attack. Black is keeping the king on e8, and now the big problem is not the pawn on c3. The big problem is queen c4. So the point is black hits the queen and the pawn on a2. So if you give up the pawn on a2, you have no king's attack here. The king stands on e8. So if you trade the queens, white has committed a lot of weaknesses for no good reason. So there's no f5. You can forget about f5. It just makes no sense at all. And the weakness on c4 is here, the pawn on c3 is weak. So I think that here Gukesh was like shocked. What happened here? And he played queen e3, protect the pawn. Now comes rook c8. He played rook c1. Now comes queen c4. Hitting the pawn on a2. And Gukesh correctly estimated that he has to sacrifice the pawn to go for the initiative at the king side. He played f5. And now he was shocked again. Queen d3 was a great response by Ding Liren. The point is, he's not even going after the pawn on a2. He just wants to trade the queens, because if the queens are gone off the board, the weaknesses in White's position, they're going to stay. So Gukesh insisted keeping the queens on the board. Ding played bishop g5. The rook on c1 is hit. White went here. Black played rook c4. Hitting the rook on c2. And now you're looking at the position, you're wondering, how did we get here? Right? And after a couple of moves, Gukesh's position was just getting worse and worse, and he was spending a lot of time with every single move. And ultimately, one pawn dropped, the second pawn dropped, and now we're technically in a highly technical position. So, okay, technically here, Gukesh made a mistake with queen c2. He either played bishop c5 and make the position more complex, but still, black had the better position and more time on the clock. So queen c2, queen c4. What happened here is that Ding just capitalized on the two extra pawns. He simplified the position. e5 was a very nice shot. Bishop d3, queen d4 just simplified the position. Just up 2 pawns. Ding simply activated his pieces, made sure there's no tricks. And after the second time control was reached, Gukesh resigned. So this was a very, very powerful game by Ding Liren, but I think that Gukesh made a mistake by choosing a continuation in the opening where he has to make a lot of computer-like decisions. So that's why there was this moment when he had to play, again, this bishop f1, bishop d3. Then he had to play bishop d4, bishop f2. He made his weakness on b4, so I would say that his last mistake was playing b4. This was simply too much. And I don't care what the engines say, clearly because Gukesh is not an engine, but he essentially wound himself in a position where he had to make a lot of engine moves. And this is really difficult. It burns you a lot of time. So he was not feeling the pace. And for Ding, it was just very obvious. Exploit weaknesses at the queen side. And essentially, after a couple of moves, Gukesh found himself in a position which is very, very difficult to play. And that resulted in the loss. So overall, I think it was a very exciting game. And Ding is not to be underestimated, because he is still the world champion. He is one of the greatest players currently in the world, and I don't care what his rating says, he is the champion. And for Gukesh, it's going to be a very important lesson. I think before the start of the match, there was so big psychological pressure on his result that to some extent its result is only logical. Or maybe now it's going to be a bit easier for him to play. No longer he is playing as the #1 player. I mean, even in pre-match interviews, Ding said that Gukesh is the favorite. Have you ever heard of this before in any World Championship match? The World Champion says, I'm an underdog in an upcoming match. It's unheard of, basically. Either way, exciting times are ahead. So write your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about the game? What do you think where Gukesh made a mistake? Do you agree with me? Do you think the opening choice was a mistake, or you think he could have done something a bit better at a later stage? What do you think about Ding's chances to defend his title? It's only one game, but of course we can talk about all of this as well. And of course, if you liked my video, please do not forget to press like and consider subscribing to my channel, as I'll be making daily recaps from the World Championship match, Ding Liren against Gukesh. Thank you for watching. Take care.